There is a sound a rugby field makes, the thud of bodies in a tackle, the roar of a crowd, the sharp blast of a referee's whistle. For Joost van der Westhuizen, there was the sound of a life lived at full volume. He was a symphony of power and pace, a Springbok legend who seemed carved from granite and willpower. But in 2011, the music stopped. A new sound began. This sound, the sound of machines helping him breathe, the sound of a battle he never trained for. The diagnosis was motor neuron disease, a death sentence wrapped in a medical terminology. The doctors gave him 2 to 5 years to live. For a man who had spent his life in absolute control of his body, who could read a play before it happened, he could break a tackle with pure will. This was the one opponent that couldn't be beaten, the one tackle he couldn't shake off, or it seemed. To understand the depth of this fall, you have to remember the height. June 24th, 1995, Ellis Park, South Africa versus New Zealand, the entire nation holding its breath. This was US. He wasn't just a try-scoring scrum-half, he was a revolutionary. At 6.1 feet and 95 kilograms, he had the body of a flanker in the number 9 jersey. But his true genius wasn't in the highlight reels, it was in the spaces between, the micro battles only coaches truly saw. He was the quarterback of the Springbok blitz defense, reading the play, jamming the inside channel, shutting down attacks before they developed. He wasn't just a defender, he was the system. But what opponents feared most wasn't his tackle, it was his voice. As former England lock Jim Hamilton recalled, he was the only scrum half genuinely feared. He'd be in your ear in Afrikaans and in English, telling you exactly what he's going to do to you in the next ruck. It was a psychological warfare, and he was the master of it. He was more than a player. He was a force of nature, untouchable, unstoppable. This was the man motor neuron disease tried to break. Motor neuron disease is a thief. It doesn't just take your life all at once. It steals it piece by piece. First, it took his voice. The voice that had orchestrated defenses and intimidated opponents was reduced to a whisper, then a slur, then silence. Then it took his legs. The legs that had carried him to 38 test tries, the legs that had powered through tackles, now they wouldn't hold his weight. Then it took his hands, the hands that had passed the ball with surgical precision. Now they couldn't grip a pen to sign his name. And finally, it came for his breath. The breath that had powered him through 80 minutes of test rugby. Now he needed a machine to do it for him. There's a moment every MND patient faces. The moment you realize your body is no longer yours. When the prison you trapped in used to be your temple. For Joost, that moment came when he tried to read a bedtime story to his children, and he couldn't form the words. The gladiator had been stripped of his armor. The warrior had lost his weapons, but he hadn't lost his fight. When Joost was 21 years old, he faced a crisis. He'd been told he wasn't good enough to be a fly-half, that his future was at scrum-half. In his own words, I was devastated. It felt like a demotion. His father sat him down and gave him an ultimatum. Are you going to run away, or are you going to be the best scrum-half this country has ever seen? The choice is yours. 20 years later, confined to a wheelchair, facing an enemy that couldn't be tackled or outrun, Joost faced the same choice, run away or fight. He launched the J9 Foundation. The famous number on his back was now a symbol of hope for others facing the same enemy. The man who was once the face of South African physical prowess became the face of devastating vulnerability. And in that vulnerability, he found a new, deeper strength. Even as his body failed, his mind stayed sharp. He played wheelchair rugby. He raised millions for MND's research. He gave families a voice when their own voices were being stolen. As Brian Abana reflected, even as his body failed, his mind was sharp. He was still analyzing, still fighting, teaching us all about true courage. He showed the world that strength isn't just physical, that courage isn't just on the field, that a warrior fights until the final whistle, no matter the opponent. On February 6, 27, the final whistle blew. Joost van der Westhuizen was gone. He was 45 years old. The sound of a machine is gone, but the sound of his impact, that echoes forever. We remember the tries, we remember the tackles, we remember the World Cup glory. But that is not his true legacy. His legacy is here, in the millions raised for the MND research, in the families given support when they needed it most, in patients who find hope when they were told there was none. He took his own suffering and used it as a platform to ease the suffering of others. The story of Joost van der Westhuizen is not a tragedy. It's a story of two halves. The first was a masterclass in physical dominance, the second, a lesson in spiritual courage. He showed us how to live with the power. He showed us how to die with grace. His father once asked him, run away or become the best. Joost chose to become the best, twice, once on the field, once in the face of death. The roar of a crowd from the man who never, ever gave up. That sound echoes forever. Your story is one of many. Rugby has given us legends who face battles far beyond the field. If you want to hear more stories like this, the real battles behind rugby's greatest names, hit the subscribe button because these aren't just highlight reels. These are stories that matter. And if yours fight inspired you, drop a comment below. Who's the next legend we should cover? Thank you for watching.